Hello and welcome to my book talk about The Awakening by Kate Chopin. My name is Betsy Hollis and I will be giving, as a guide, I will give you kind of the rundown of this novel which I read. Just to give you a little background, Kate Chopin, she was born February 8, 1850 in St. Louis, Missouri. She was one of 5 children, but a lot of her 2 sisters died in infancy and her brothers died in their 20s. She was sent to a Catholic boarding school when she was 5, and her father died in a tragic train accident. So she was sent to live with her grandmother and her great-grandmother, and they were all widowed women. So she was surrounded by independent, strong women. Then later in life, in 1870, she married Oscar Chopin, the son of a prominent Creole family in Louisiana, and she fulfilled her social responsibilities that women were expected of by having children. So she had 6 children in her first 10 years of marriage. So talk about fulfilling her responsibilities. Her whole family basically, just death is prominent. So let's get started. The Awakening was set in the 1800s, and it begins in Grand Isle, and it's kind of like a summer resort. And the story kind of begins with Leonce, and he is the husband of Edna, who this story is about. They have 2 children, except for Edna. She kind of lets her children kind of be. She isn't like the, oh, let me go be a helicopter parent. She often forgets them at times in the book. Edna feels this indescribable oppression, which seemed to generate in some unfamiliar part of her consciousness, filled her whole being with vague anguish. It was like a shadow, like a mist passing across her soul summer day. That was on page 14 and 15. So she feels this anguish, this kind of oppression. Often at night she cries. She's very unhappy in her marriage. Leonce is he fills his day with going to a restaurant or going out to eat or going to play cards. That kind of takes a toll on their marriage, and Edna is very much left alone most of the time. In comes Robert Lebrun. They spend a ton of their time together, and at first their relationship is very innocent. Lebrun is the son of the owner of the holiday resort. And another person Edna also spends her time with is Adele. And Adele is the epitome of what a woman should be during that time. She's very beautiful. She has 3 children, 1 every 2 years, and plans to have another one soon. And as Edna spends more time with Adele, she gets this realization, like the power kind of a woman has. I think her relationship with Adele kind of leads up to her awakening. Edna is doted upon by Robert because it is said that he spends every year he picks a woman to dote upon, and this year it happened to be Edna. And this awakening happens, and what I mean by awakening is her desire for Robert as a married woman. And on page 33 it's described as that a certain light was beginning to dawn dimly within her, the light which, showing the way, forbids it. Suddenly she becomes awakened. Her eyes are open to all these desires that she has, that she was the kind of woman who she would be the perfect wife on the outside, but on the inside she would feel so much more than what her role was. So as their kind of relationship grows and she has this full of awakening and passion, she learns to swim and she starts painting things that she had all kind of left behind. She's full of all these new ambitions, and even once when she's out in the water swimming, she swims so far she is confronted with death, and she becomes so afraid. She quickly swims back and becomes upset, and she tells her husband how fearful she was, and he was like, I was watching you the whole time. And then so she's kind of sad about that, and then when she talks to Robert, he was like, it's because it's the 28th of August or something, and you overcome with the God, and he just kind of comforts her, and they kind of form a forbidden love, even though they both kind of deny it on the outside. There's one moment in the book where she comes home really late at night and she sits in a what's it called? She sits on her porch, and her husband was like, it's like past 1, you need to come in. And she's just like, no, I don't want to. And he's like, he becomes angry because he can see the change in her, this new freedom, this new attitude, and it's strange to him. It seems to him as if she's become kind of mental. And he's like, whatever, women are crazy. As their summer comes to a close, Robert's like, I guess I'm gonna go to Mexico. And she's like, what? Why are you crazy? And one is like, oh, yay, Robert, go to Mexico, woo! Why he really goes to Mexico is to kind of escape all these feelings he has. That's her heart. And they leave Grand Isle in New Orleans. Their family's like really rich. Like they have this huge house, all these servants. She can basically do whatever she wants. She pursues her painting, but really she ignores all her responsibilities as a wife. She kind of forgets about her children most of the time. They slip her mind. Suspicions about his wife kind of starts to confuse her husband Lance, and he goes to a doctor he knows, and asks if something is off about his wife, if something is wrong, and the doctor kind of suspects their affair, but he doesn't say it to Lance. He just says, oh, just leave her be. While Lance leaves for New York, and Edna is left alone, and even her children are taken away because her mother knows that she forgets about her children. So she is still very angry about her marriage. She is unhappy about her circumstances, and there's one night where she takes off her wedding ring and flings it on the carpet, and she even stamps it with her heel, striving to crush it. Page 135. Now, this is the point in time where, lo and behold, Alcea Robin comes in the picture. Edna, she's still in love with Robert. I mean, she just uses Alcea Robin to satisfy her kind of desires and needs. So she's never really emotionally attached to him. She just kind of uses him. This time where she has having this affair, but with no emotional attachment whatsoever, she talks to this pianist, Mademoiselle R, and she knows this pianist. She's a magnificent pianist, and the pianist, she only likes to play for Edna because Mademoiselle R recognizes the same kind of awakening, what effect her music has on her. So Edna often goes to Mademoiselle R's house to listen to her music, and Edna even discovers that Robert had been sending letters to Mademoiselle R asking about Edna. During this time, during one of their conversation, Mademoiselle R questions Edna, do you love Robert? And Edna says, I love Robert, and that's the first time she says it out loud. She's gonna move, so she holds this huge banquet with, they all kind of go to this dinner, and it's this huge, like, beautiful dinner. She puts it all on her husband's tab, of course, and it's kind of like her going away. After she decides that she's gonna go to her new home, she goes to Mademoiselle R's house, and in walks Robert. So Robert comes in there, and she kind of confronts him. She's like, have you thought about me? And he was like, they kind of have this awkward kind of reunion, and he kind of tells her that he left for Mexico because he had to escape his feelings. Like, you have to come and visit me. And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll come. But he never does. Back onto her house later, and she kisses Alcea, even though, Robert's back. And I'm pretty sure they do something else besides kissing, but I don't really want to talk about it. So she kind of has all this power, but she doesn't have what she really wants. She goes to this kind of secret coffee place that not a lot of people know about, thinking about painting, and in walks Robert again by accident. Why haven't you come and visit me? I'm destined to see you only by accident. So why have you kept from me, Robert? He tells her, supposedly there's no use telling you I've been very busy, or that I've been sick, or that I've been to see you, not found you at home. Please let me off with any one of these excuses. And she calls him selfish. You save yourself something. I don't know, but there's some selfish motive, and in sparing yourself, you never consider for a moment what I think, or how I feel. Your neglect and your indifference. I suppose this is what you would call unwomanly, but I have got into a habit of expressing myself. It doesn't matter to me. You may think me unwomanly if not, if you like. And he says, no, I only think it was cruel. as I said the other day. Maybe not intentionally cruel, but you seem to be forcing me into disclosures which can result in nothing, as if you would have me a bare wound for the pleasure of looking at, without the intention or power of healing it. After that, they kind of go back to saying, oh, wasn't this a delightful place? She leads him back to her little pigeon house. He goes to kind of to like sit down, and he closes his eyes, and she goes, are you asleep? And he's like, no, and she kisses him. And you're like, oh my gosh, climax of the whole book. She asks him, and he tells her, now you know. Oh, romance. And she goes, why have you been fighting against it? She said, and he goes, why? Because you're not free. You were Leon's wife. I couldn't help loving you if you were 10 times his wife, but so long I went away from you and kept away and stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like true love. Excuse me for the graphic images, gosh. She says, something put into my head that you cared for me. I lost my senses. I forgot everything but a wild dream of your some way becoming my wife. And she goes, your wife? And he goes, religion, loyalty, everything would give away if only you cared. And you're like, finally, as a reader, you're like, finally, these two are getting together. Everything's gonna be great. But no, I'll see the little dingbat jerk face, and he's like, hey, you need to go to Adele's house because she's like having birth or whatever. And you're just like, gosh. So she goes, don't go. And she goes, I shall come back and I'll find you here. Adele's having a baby, and Edna's kind of like, geesh, I remember those rowdy times. And she remembers how she added another person to the world and how she felt during that time. She could have gone back to the pigeon house, but something keeps her. Before she goes back to the pigeonhole, and Adele says to her, think of the children. And I think this is kind of like a foreshadowing of what's going to happen, and it's kind of like an omen. Leaves and goes back to the pigeon house, and what does she find? Not Robert. All that's left of Robert is a note which says, I love you, goodbye, because I love you. What? So again, Edna is filled with so much sadness, but there's still a hope that maybe he'll come back. Maybe, maybe not. Once she finds that, Robert isn't gonna come back, she has another awakening, and this is the most devastating of all. She's haunted by her thoughts of her children, and realizing that she would eventually found even Robert unable to fulfill her desires and dreams. Edna feels like so alone, and she goes back to Grand Isle. Victor, who's Robert's younger brother, and he's working on one of the houses. He offers her a place to stay, and she's like, I think I'm gonna go take a bath, I guess. Like, but the water's freezing. So she goes down to the beach, takes off all her clothes, which is kind of weird. Has this kind of emotional and intellectual awareness. After she has all this awareness, she just needs to escape, and so she swims to the sea, and the sea is like a constant theme in this book of kind of like Edna describes it as a tender embrace. And she swims out and out and out and out, and when she surpasses that time where she was confronted by death and was fearful, she just keeps swimming and swimming and swimming, and she thinks of her husband and her children and Robert's failure to understand her. And guess what else happens? So she's swimming. Boom. Book ends. We don't really know. It's kind of like an open question. Does she commit suicide? Does magically Robert come out of nowhere and save her with a boat? That would be my ending. But no, it just kind of ends with just her swimming and growing tired. And you want to know the last words of this book? Let me tell you. Page 303. She looked into the distance, and the old terror flamed up for an instant, then sank again. Edna heard her father's voice and her sister Margaret. She heard the barking of an old dog that was chained to the sycamore tree. The spurs of the cavalry officer clanged as he walked across the porch. She's talking about her father. And there was a hum of bees, and the musty odor of pinks filled the air. And so the book ends, and you're just kind of like, what? Are you serious? Are you serious? All these awakenings, and boom, this is like the crappiest awakening ever. And it kind of leaves this open question of whether suicide, is that a surrender or is it triumph? Is it cowardly or is it courageous? And I think, personally, it was pretty stupid, and I wish that her and Robert would have gone at it, but then again, I don't believe in, you know, I don't believe in all this, like, you know, affairs and whatnot. So, thank you for listening. Death. And she kisses him. And you're like, oh my gosh, climax of the whole book.